Highway 48 to the south of us. That's the Port Isabel water tower way over there, and I guess that's the Laguna Heights water tower, and then Laguna Vista on down beyond it. This week on Border Outdoors, we're going to talk about the Laguna Madre, and you might wonder, well, why are you talking about the Laguna Madre out here in the middle of this big old flat? Well, because this big flat's about to get some water on it. It's taken a long process. Some private landowners in the state of Texas had to reach an agreement, but they have finally reached an agreement, and I think it's going to help the bay. We're going to look at some of the replanting techniques that are going on, the replanting of grass that they're figuring out how to do in the bay itself. We're going to do some fishing, and we're going to reminisce with some of the old pioneers of the Port Isabel area, see some of their photographs. I've got my partner and mentor, John Weech, with me, who knows all about all of this. I'm Steve Walker. This is Border Outdoors. Vámonos. Just so you folks from the Upper Valley who might not know where we're talking about, I'm on Highway 48, the road that runs between Brownsville and Port Isabel. This is the culvert that will feed the Bahia Grande. The Brownsville Ship Channel is about a half a mile due south of me. They're going to open up this old canal, and the water is going to rush through this culvert. This big old wide open piece of desolate nothing is the Bahia Grande. Well, do you think anything's ever going to grow out here, John?
I don't know. I think that maybe you need circulation of the water.
Well, you know what they're going to have? They're going to have fresh rainwater mixing with that salt water from the channel. And like we were seeing in the bay itself the other day, those guys that are replanting.
That's right. Well, originally there was growth in these things along the bank when this was all water. There was growth along the bank. I don't recall whether there was growth out in the middle.
It's going to be a chance, but it's a chance to take.
It's worth the doing. It's worth the trying. This is a tremendous area.
It is. It is thousands of acres.
Yeah.
Well, let's go out into the bay now. And let's see what the bait's like, and let's see those guys that are replanting grass.
Okay. He's not as big as your lure.
He's not any bigger than
He's not as big as your lure. We weren't really very conservation-minded in those days. What did it need to be? Anytime you went fishing, you caught all you could eat. We didn't have ice boxes and all that fancy stuff. We just gutted and killed them and brought them home. But anywhere in this bay, anywhere, you could catch more than you could eat. And we normally would fish an hour and a half or so, have all we could use possibly, and that's all. Today you can come out here and spend a day and you might get enough to eat, but you're going to have to be lucky. Run across a bunch. The bait in the bay now seems to be improving. We've seen more mullet today than we've seen in years, and you see an occasional piggy perch. They almost disappeared out of this bay, but it looks like they're coming back. All that's good. Maybe we'll have a few fish, but the ocean just doesn't produce like we used to think it would. There are too many of us on this planet now. Pollution, overfishing, and so forth, that's probably what got them. Probably pollution more even than overfishing. They need certain conditions in the bay to hatch, and damming the rivers and increasing the salinity of the bays is not good for the bays as far as the fish are concerned. Yes, too much progress. That's what it boils down to.
What's your name, friend?
Charlie Belair,
Who are you working with?
Belair Consulting.
Is this a state project or a private project?
It's a private project, but it's required by the Corps of Engineers as part of a permit to dredge a channel.
What are you going to do with this grass these guys are putting in these barrels?
We're going to replant it. It's a transplanting project. The project the oil company constructed impacted seagrass, and we're having to restore the area, restore the seagrass to the area.
Does it work? I mean, is it easy to restore seagrass?
It's not real easy, but physically it's very demanding. But as far as the track record of success, sometimes it works very well, sometimes it doesn't work so well. We're expecting this to work pretty well because of the soil conditions here. They're really conducive for the seagrass to grow back, so we're optimistic about this. We do about half an acre an hour is what we do. So we dig, get all our tubs full, and then start planting, and we can put in about half an acre an hour. So
How many acres did you say you're gonna do this all together?
It's 44 and a half acres. So we'll be here better part of a month, I imagine. Yes. So it's about 3 miles long channel. So we're on both sides of the channel and around the rig basin.
Well, now, this time of the year, you tend to see more bait than you would anyway, but the fact of the matter is, everybody, old-timers included, are saying they're seeing more bait now than they have in a long time. I don't know why, but empirical evidence is all that we can go by. What we see is what we believe. And we've seen a lack of bait in years past, and we're seeing more bait now. But you know, when you start talking about what was, there's just a few years ago, in the evolutionary scale of things, Laguna Madre was absolutely one of the greatest bays on this planet. And there are people alive today that remember all of that, and they have photographs of that. I want to introduce a couple of them to you now, and I want you to hear what they have to say, and I want you to see their photographs. I'm with Mrs. Jane Parker. The Parker family is one of the pioneer families in the Rio Grande Valley, particularly here in Cameron County. Her people developed Treasure Hills in Harlingen, Almedo. Well, Parker Lake is now called Laguna Atascosa, or it was originally called Laguna Atascosa, and you all changed it to Parker Lake, and now the government has it. But they go back a long, long time. She's been nice enough to share some of the old photographs she's got with us. Look at that, Jane, the tarpon those guys caught. Now, who are those two little boys we see in that?
Well, the smallest one is my husband. It was Dr. Parker. He practiced in San Benito for years and years. The other boy is his brother Lloyd. His father's standing in behind the...
Yeah, you can see part of him there.
And then this is his Uncle Bill over here.
With the big hat on?
One morning's fishing. Isn't that something?
Look at that old rod and reel they were using. Yeah, it goes back to days when the drags were just a piece of leather. You put your thumb on it
and hope you could hold it.
Yeah.
The boat is interesting. They had one of the first outboards in this area also.
What brand was it, do you remember?
I don't know.
But it
I do know that Daddy Lloyd took Mom Patty out. She rode around in it, came back in, and she said, well, I've been riding in that boat. I don't have to do that again.
Thank you very much.
A little too fast.
Boy, the bay was full of tarpon in those days, wasn't it? Gosh. There's still a few tarpon out on the end of the jetties, but everybody tells me back in the 20s and 30s and even in the 40s.
All up and down the bay. There were tarpon all over the bay. You'd see them like in the herds of reds now, you'd see herds of tarpon.
My gosh.
And they were so much fun.
You remember the days when the Bahia Grande, for example, it's dry right now, but you remember when it was wet.
When it used to have water.
Yeah,
There was a lot of that area that was covered and stayed that way all the time. That makes you think you're silting into.
Well, when they cut the channel, that changed a lot of that. You know, it drained the water off those lakes.
You're talking about the
ship channel.
Oh, the Brownsville ship channel. Yes, well, in the intercoastal along here, too.
It had to have a big effect on the bay. But, you know, they're talking about reflooding the Bahia.
That's what I understand.
Boy,
Won't that be fun?
That will be.
Oh, think of all the birds and the different types of waterfowl that's going to come into that. Isn't it going to be great? Yeah, that's going to be fun.
I sure hope it works. Let's look at this other photograph.
This is one of my favorites.
That is a giant ray.
Isn't that something?
And it's 1930. That's the Gulf Breeze. Was that your family's boat?
That was Aunt Dolly and Uncle Al Parker's boat. Uncle Al is sitting in the mouth of that ray. And then behind it there is my father-in-law.
The hoist was capable of lifting 2,000 pounds, and it wouldn't lift the ray up.
That's as far as they could get it out of the water.
So the ray was more than 2,000 pounds. Mr. Kurt Carpenter, born and raised in Point Isabel. Gosh, when you were a kid, Mr. Carpenter, it was horseback days, wasn't it?
Sure was. This was cow country, you might say, down here.
There weren't any paved streets?
No paved streets in Port Isabel. The only paved street was the 100 that came into Port Isabel and left. The rest of the streets were all more or less like Padre Island at that time. They had deep sand, rutted streets, terrible for automobiles, okay for horses.
Look at that jewfish. How did it catch jewfish in those days?
We used hand lines. We went out.
Fish that size?
Yeah. We'd go out at, I'm not sure where this was caught, but I'm sure it probably was caught right out there around the North Jetties. We used to fish off the North Jetties there, and we'd use a rig maybe with a old tire casing or something like that, and we'd bait it down the bottom, and then we'd have it hand line, and you'd hook those jewfish, and you'd have to drag them out of those rocks.
Talking about rigs, look at that rod and reel and that big speck.
I'd say that speck there would probably go about 7 or 8 pounds anyway, maybe even more. It just got the big, the reel makes it look smaller because the reels were so big in those days.
Look at this lady, look at the clothes she's got on standing next to that tarpon. Everybody says how many tarpon there used to be.
Oh, it was just untold numbers of tarpon, especially out at the mouth of the Rio Grande. You just go down there and see acres and acres and acres. This lady here's got one of the old dresses on and the old rod and reels, and that's something else, isn't it?
Now, this is something we never see anything of anymore.
Very seldom. I don't know if they catch them and turn them loose. They might catch them on the long lines, but I haven't seen any of these saltfish.
Like off the mouth of the river?
Yeah, this was probably caught out. They fished mostly off the mouth of the river. They didn't go out too deep in those days. They didn't go out because they didn't know about the billfish being out there in the Gulf, and mostly they fished for tarpon, and then probably caught this either while tarpon fishing or while out there over the snapper banks. They could have been off the east banks. And that's one of the old boats. You can see what a rattle trap it was. They didn't have anything fancy in those days, and the fish was so big that he had to have it lifted up on block and tackle. And that was a fish that was caught out of my dad's boat back in 1937.
Yeah. You know, Kurt Carpenter was telling me a story when he was a little boy. He and his dad would what they call use strike nets, and what it was a gill net. But they would go up the bay, and they'd set out that gill net, then they'd get up into the flats, and they would start hitting the water. And sometimes they'd use a hammer and a pipe. Sometimes they'd just hit the surface of the water with a paddle. But what they were trying to do was push the fish that were up on the flats into the net to strike the net. And then, of course, as they had all the fish they wanted, they would come back to where the first part of the net was and just start hauling fish out of there. And that went on for years and years. Of course, gill nets, strike nets, all that kind of commercial fishing is out. There's been incredible innovations. Super powerful boats, big, wide, stable tunnel boats, ultralight, high-tech fishing equipment. The future of the bay now is in the hands of sport fishermen. Tourism. No longer do the commercial fishermen have really a say in what goes on. Let's take a break.
I'm with my friend and professional guide, Daryl Adams. Daryl grew up here and has seen the changes in the bay. Now, every guide has his own specialties, but more and more, it's getting to where you have to hunt the fish.
Bird dead ahead, Steve. Get ready.
Okay. Now, when I see him hit neutral on the throttle, I'm going to hit the kill switch, and then we're going to run forward and cast into these fish. He's going to get upwind of them. So when we start drifting,
Right out in front, Steve. Go up front, right out in front.
there he is. You know, when it's flat and calm and still and the sun's shining bright, it's pretty easy to see these big herds of red. But when it's windy and choppy, like it is this morning, it really takes an eye. And for the novice fisherman in this bay, it really pays you to use a guide. I mean, it takes an eye. It really does. We're going to have to move to the back of the boat, boys.
Well, you got the only hungry one in the bunch. I didn't even get one.
Well, turnabout's fair play these days. I think we can keep this fish, though.
That's a small red to be running these herds. He must have just picked up with them.
Answer me this one. Is it just the larger reds that are going to go out in the ocean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 24 inches up.
I think you can take him in now. Easy there, guy. There we go.
Let's check him out. Put him on the board. Look at that. It's 28 and a half.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful fish, though, isn't it?
Pretty fish.
Real pretty fish.
Well, let me put him. There he goes. We put him back. He was ready to go.
That's great.
We didn't wear him out that hard, so he'll be fun. Pulled him in pretty quick, really.
The Laguna Madre needs management. We all agree on that. Limits and size slots are essential. But for the future, The health of the bay depends on the water that flows into it. Historically, we need to keep in mind how important the Rio Grande River was to the Laguna Madre. Of course, those days are over. The dams have ended that. You go further on north, and the Arroyo Colorado is essential. And what comes out of the Arroyo Colorado has to be clean. The Laguna Atascosa, Old Parker Lake, named for Jane Parker's people. It used to be attached to the Arroyo and then into the bay, right almost at the mouth of the Arroyo. Of course, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has closed that off. Perhaps some thought could be given to opening the Laguna Atascosa back up. And then we get back to the Bahia Grande, where we're standing now. This could be a nursery for small fish. It will undoubtedly help migratory waterfowl. I'm Steve Walker. This is Border Outdoors. And some of the best news we've had in a long time is the opening up of the Bahia Grande. Que la vaya bonito.